Are you a business or are you just a photographer? What is going on, guys? George here from BeMoreGeorge.co.uk, and welcome to another episode of the Be More George podcast, your home for photographic awesomeness. And today we are going to talk about business, because too many people out there will talk about photography and talk about camera settings and talk about, well, basically a whole load of nonsense that is important, but probably not as important as your business. And if you are a full-time photographer, or you want to be a full-time photographer, your business is what's going to make you successful or not, and not so much your photography. I know that is probably either infuriated some people, or shocked some people, or just completely gone over other people's heads, but it's true. You do need to be good at photography in order to make money as a photographer, but you need to be better at business than you do at photography in order to make money as a photographer. And not a lot of people want you to know that. And I'm not saying it's a conspiracy or anything like that. It's just the fact that there are a lot of people out there selling training and selling gear and selling techniques and a whole host of things about photography that is useful, and I do recommend you go out and you learn the craft and you learn new things and you try new things. But what there isn't a lot of is a lot of people telling you just how important it is to be good at business. Because you could be the best photographer in the world, but if you are shit at business, you are not going to be successful, and that is just the hard truth. And it's something that needs to be said and put out there. So, I want you to ask yourself a question. Are you a photographer who makes money taking photos? Or are you a business that happens to make money taking photos? Now, I now think of myself as a business, and I happen to make the majority of my money by taking pictures. That wasn't always the case, though. I didn't always have this mindset. And I'll be honest with you, before I had this sort of light bulb moment where I started thinking of myself more as a business first, things weren't great. I was probably either not full-time photographer yet, and if I was, things weren't as good as they could be. And it was because I was focused more on my photography and less on the business that I am, when I should have been putting more time and more effort and more attention onto that business. Because let's face it, we are photographers. Well, hopefully we all are photographers that are listening to this. If you're not, you're more than welcome to stay and have a listen, because this probably applies to most anybody in the creative industries. But we're photographers, and our first passion and our first sort of talents more than likely lie with being a photographer, and that could be in a whole number of different areas of photography. It could be weddings, newborns, celebrities, editorials, events, whatever it is. We're probably very good at certain aspects of it, more so than others. So some of us might be really good at lighting, and some of us more so with compositions and posing or seeing candid moments. The point is, we have something within our photography that we know we're good at, and we tend to focus all of our attention on that because we're good at it. And that makes sense. It's natural. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's what we do. But because we are photographers or creatives, first, we neglect the business side of things. Now, I'm not saying that everybody simply ignores the business side, because you can't. If you are in any fashion of a professional photographer where you take money from other people to provide them with the service of photography, you have to have done some business in order to get to where you're at. So I do understand that we do focus on business, but I don't think we focus on business nearly enough, because there are too many good photographers, and not only good, there are too many great photographers out there that should be doing a lot better than they are, and it's because they're focused purely on their craft of photography instead of focusing on the business side of things. So, are you a photographer who happens to make money taking pictures, or are you a business that happens to make money taking pictures? Have you thought about that answer yet? Because odds are most of you are going to say you're a photographer. And let me give you an example. You run into somebody at an event somewhere, or in a lift, or at a bus stop, or on a train. It doesn't matter. You run into somebody and you strike up a conversation with this person, and they say to you, "Oh, I'm so-and-so, blah, 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 I do this." What do you do? Your first answer is going to be, "I'm a photographer." I will nearly 100% guarantee that nearly everybody listening will say, "I'm a photographer." And then you might follow it up with, "I'm a wedding photographer," or "I'm a newborn photographer," or whatever it is that you specialize in. There's nothing wrong with saying that I'm a photographer, but because we do it, and we do it so instinctively, it shows that that is our focus and that is our mindset. Our mindset lends itself to, because we're creatives, say and think first as a photographer. Now, I still probably, if I were to run into somebody and that was the question they were going to ask me, I would probably still say I am a photographer. But I would do it in a much more different way now than I would have done 4 or 5 years ago. 4 or 5 years ago, I would have said exactly what I said at the beginning. I would have said, "Oh, I'm a photographer," or, "Oh, I'm a magazine photographer. I shoot mostly for music magazines, blah, 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 blah." They probably really don't care. They're asking to be nice and, whatever. Now, I'm not going to tell you exactly what I say, because it's personalized, really, to whoever it is I'm talking. But I do have what is referred to as an elevator pitch. And it's not something that is going to sound extraordinarily silly. But what it is designed to do is to inform a person of what I do, but then inform them of how what I do can be beneficial, perhaps to them or perhaps to somebody that they know. But the point is, I'm doing it now from a business perspective instead of just a photographer perspective. Because originally, like I said, 4 or 5 years ago, I would have answered that question with exactly what I photograph, and I would have done it in a way that is almost listing out, what I do, but not really explaining the benefits of what I do to that person or somebody that they know. But anyways, I'm getting a little bit off track, because the reason I want to talk about this is because it's very important that we think about ourselves as a business, because once we start doing that, it changes everything about how we approach our day-to-day lives as a business, and how we approach our marketing, and how we approach our online personas. Because when you're self-employed, as most of us are, everything you do online represents your business. Whether you like it or not, everything you do online is in some form you marketing your business. And this is especially true if you're self-employed and your business name is your name. So me, for example, I'm George Fairburn, and my Facebook page would simply say George Fairburn Photographer, and my website doesn't even say that. Actually, I think it does. I think I recently just changed my logo, so it will say George Fairburn Photographer. But my Instagram is just at George Fairburn. My Twitter, at George Fairburn. Everything is pretty much at George Fairburn. So my name is my business, and therefore everything that I post online is going to be representative of my business. And it's really, really important that you realize that, because I will tweet when I'm watching Great British Bake Off because I love Great British Bake Off, but I will do tweets that are still within the brand of my business, and it helps that my brand is pretty much me. I don't really try to sugarcoat anything or change the way I say anything to change the perspective of my brand. My brand is me. And I'm fortunate in that position that it works for the industries that I work in and that it works for my brand. Some people aren't in that position, and that is where it's even more important that you either separate it out or you start thinking of yourself as a business, which you should be doing anyways. But if you are the different sort of personality than your brand is, you need to reevaluate something and change something there, because they're not going to coexist unless they're completely separated, and that your business name isn't your name, where you can separate out these things. But the vast majority of us are self-employed, and the vast majority of us have our business name as our name. So not only do we have to think about ourselves as a business purely because everything we do is going to be representative of our business, but because of our marketing. And I know I just said that everything we do online is marketing, but now I'm going to talk more specifically about actual, I'm meaning to market something, marketing. So the first and most important thing that you need to do if you're a business and you're going to start thinking about yourself as a business is you need to have a defined target market. Now, I can't tell you how many times I have talked to other photographers, whether it be at a convention or a trade show or a training day or just online in different Facebook groups, and I'll say, oh, what's your market for your photography? And if it's a wedding photographer, they probably say something along the lines of, oh, well, my market is newly engaged couples. Oh, that's good. Well, what kind of newly engaged couples? Oh, what do you mean? They don't have a really defined target market, because to say a newly defined couple is absurd, because there are newly engaged couples around the world every hour. Hundreds of them. People get engaged every day around the world. So that's probably a bit extreme, because they probably aren't targeting newly engaged couples throughout the world. They're probably targeting them at least within the country they live in, but they're not saying that much when I'm asking the question, which implies that they don't have a defined target market for their business. And it's imperative that you have a defined target market, because otherwise you're just wasting your time. If you're putting out information saying, hey, book me, I shoot weddings, but you don't have the person that you'd like to shoot for's image in your head, you're just wasting your time, because what you're doing is you're going to put out very broad, very generic, and very boring marketing material. Even if your photos aren't, and your photos are amazing and there's nothing boring about them, your marketing is going to be boring, because it's going to be generic and not targeted at anybody specific, so there's no interest in it. There's nothing there to grab a person and for them to say, oh my God, I love that. Because that's what target marketing, having a target market, will do for you. You will be able to say, I know my target market shops at X. And you will be able to use something from that to make it relevant to them and interesting to them, and therefore make them want to buy from you. So that is the first and probably one of the most important things that we need to do by thinking as a business. And to help you out, I've got a free target market worksheet for you. You can get from the website. If you just go to bemoregeorge.co.uk, go to /market, you can grab a free target market worksheet. It's very awesome. It's very easy to use. It's 5 pages. It will go through and tell you what to define, what sort of criteria you need to define in order to get a really good target market. Because once you've got a target market established, then you can start doing really awesome marketing and getting things going in the right direction. But besides, you have to think as a business for so many other reasons. So finance, financials, your finances, I'm sure that we all are very aware of our finances. But if you're not thinking as a business and you're thinking as a photographer, how much gear are you buying and how much money are you wasting on gear? Seriously, look through your accounts and tell me how much money you've wasted on gear. Because if you're thinking as a business, you're going to look at the new camera that just came out and go, is that camera going to make me more money? If the answer is no, then you need to ask yourself another question, which is not having that camera going to make me lose money? And if the answer to that one is also no, then there's no reason to be buying that camera. And if you are, you're buying it with your photographer head on and you're doing it purely because you want a new toy. From a business perspective, it doesn't make any sense, and there's no reason to be purchasing it. And this applies for literally any bit of equipment that you're going to buy for your business. Is it going to make you more money, or is not having it going to make you lose money? And I know those sound like really overly simplified questions, but they're not once you get down into the nuts and bolts of them. So I think the first one's pretty easy and self-explanatory. Is it going to make me more money? That should be fairly straightforward to answer, but it might not be. So, for example, a wedding photographer might not have a 24-70 2.8 lens, which is probably one of the most diverse and useful lenses out there. I'm not a wedding photographer, by the way, but I know that that lens would be amazing to have at weddings. So if a wedding photographer doesn't have that lens and they've only got, say, 35mm prime and a 50mm prime, and they could look at the 24-70 and go, is it going to make me more money? And they probably could answer that question yes, because by having a better lens that gives them more access to good photos without intruding upon their customers too much or the people at the weddings too much, they could therefore then market themselves a little bit differently and in fact make more money. The second question is a little bit trickier to answer and quantify. And that is not having that going to make me lose money? Now, the first example I'm going to give you is really easy to answer, and that is to say, if the current camera you've got or the current lenses you've got are shit, and the photos coming out of it are rubbish because they're not in focus, or it doesn't handle low light well, or whatever it is, you should be able to answer the question then with a yes, because you could look at your current equipment and go, oh my God, that sucks. This camera is better, it's sharp, it handles better in low light, whatever it might be. Your answer then is going to be yes, because you could say that not having it is going to make you lose money. Because if you're putting out rubbish pictures, people aren't going to hire you, you're going to lose money. It's not always that easy to see, and it's hard sometimes to sit down and look at things and sort of justify where it is that you're going to lose money by not having it. Having a faster computer, for example. If your current one is really bogged down and it's taking you 2 days to edit through 1,000 photos, and you could look at a new computer and say, right, that is going to take me 2 hours to do the same amount of work, obviously it's going to save you time, which is therefore going to make you more money because it's not cutting into your time. You can take more bookings, blah, 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 blah. I don't want to dive into this too much. I want you to ask yourselves those two questions anytime you purchase a bit of kit, because quite often we see photographers buying equipment they absolutely do not need, and they're only doing it because they think they need to as a photographer. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you shouldn't go out and buy yourself something every now and again. Buy yourself something nice. Treat yourself. You should. But I think that so many photographers absolutely waste their money on stuff they absolutely don't need. And if you were to look at it from a business perspective, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Back to the original question. Are you thinking about yourself as a business or a photographer? So, it's very simple to ask yourself this. Are you a photographer who makes money taking pictures, or are you a business who happens to make money taking pictures? I am a business that happens to make money taking pictures. And it's changed everything about the way that my business runs. Prior to me making the transition into thinking that way, I wasn't shooting what I wanted to shoot. I was shooting stuff that I absolutely had no interest in shooting, and I was purely doing it because it's what I thought I needed to do. And being a photographer, I wanted to shoot as much as I could. But once I changed that mentality, it changed everything, because then I started calling the people I wanted to shoot for. I knew what I wanted to shoot, and I knew what was going to get me, what was going to make me money, because the things that I liked to shoot were the things that I was going to shoot good, and therefore going to make more money because I was producing good work. So I made that change in my mentality, and I started calling people, I started emailing people, I started marketing to those people. I had my target market defined. Everything changed, and I no longer shot the stuff that I didn't want to shoot. I could say, no, I don't want to take that job because it's not what I do. And if I hadn't changed the way I was thinking about that, I would have still said yes to the stuff that I didn't want to shoot, because it wouldn't have made sense to say no. Because as a photographer, I could have said, oh, that sounds different. That might be challenging. It might be, exciting. As a business, I could say, you know what, it's not what I do. It's not within my brand. It's not within my business. Now, again, I feel like I need to clarify that, and I'm not saying we shouldn't shoot things that we don't normally shoot. Do those as personal projects. One thing you don't want to do is go out and take a massive risk on something you've never done before on a paid job, because if it goes wrong, that's a whole can of worms you don't want to get into if it's a paid job. Go out and shoot stuff that's going to be challenging and push your boundaries and teaching you things on personal projects or on free shoots, where if you make the mistake or you can't do it, nobody loses except for maybe the time and money that you've spent. Whereas if you do it on a paid shoot, you're definitely going to lose out, and other people are going to be losing out as well, and that's just all bad. So anyways, we're going to wrap this up. I know I went on a few different tangents here, but I hope that it really drove home the point that you really, really, really need to change the way that we think about our business. And we need to think in terms of being a business instead of just being a photographer. Because I know there's way too many people out there that think of themselves as a photographer first and a business second, when you need to be thinking about yourself as a business first and then a photographer second. It might work for some people, but I think the majority of people, if they change the mindset to being a business first, it's going to change their business massively. So please remember, get your target market work. .uk/market. You'll be able to download an awesome target market worksheet. It will help you define your target market, and it will help you create a customer avatar as well. And then you'll be able to really, really, really make personalized and impactful marketing materials. So be sure to check that out. Check out the website as well. Hit me up on Instagram and Twitter. That's all at George Fairburn. And I'll let you guys go now. So remember, keep shooting, be awesome, and I'll talk to you later.